Great. Well, welcome to Philman Roll-Up and Associates Public Finance Conversations. As we were thinking about ways to stay in communication with each other, our clients, and other people we worked with, one of the things we thought about was reaching out to other professionals in our industry, getting some of their background, what got them to where they're at today, and how all those things fit into public finance. And so we have 11 of these scheduled. We're very fortunate to have Robert Whalen as our first. And I'll dive into Bob's bio for a minute, and then we can get into the conversation. So Bob graduated Harvard in 1975 and did pretty well, cum laude, and then also went to Berkeley Law School and graduated there in 1978. Following that, he served as a clerk in the Federal District Court and also at Paul Hastings, a law firm in Los Angeles. Then in '82, he joined Stradling and has been there ever since. In today's day and age, the fact that you would say someone started with an employer in 1982 and in 2020, they're still at that employer, that's rare. And so I think that says something about the firm and the individual that we're here talking with. But it wasn't like Bob just took a job and didn't do anything else along the way. He has served on the school board, Laguna Beach Unified School District. He has served in the Planning Commission for Laguna Beach and had 2 stints as mayor while also serving on the city council. How did I do, Bob? Did I get the basics down right?
You did a great job. Although I doubled down this year, so this is actually my 3rd term as mayor. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry. And for those who may not know Stradling, if you're not that actively involved in public finance, Stradling has approximately 130 attorneys. They have offices in California, Nevada, Washington, and Colorado for a total of 10 offices. Bob, when you started at Stradling, you didn't have 130 people there. Would you agree?
It did not. I think in 1982, I think I was like the 18th lawyer or something.
Employee number 18. That's good.
18 and all in Newport Beach. So it's changed a lot over the years.
Right. Well, Bob, thank you for doing this with us. It's important to me that we're doing this, and I'm very proud to have you as our first guest.
Thank you for having me.
So while I'm very new to this interview process or conversation process, probably about a minute and a half into it at this point, you are more experienced in this. I recently saw you on the news, and you were talking about beach closures in Laguna Beach.
Well, there have been a lot of media opportunities the last couple of months because of COVID-19. Obviously, the whole shutdown, stay-at-home process, and then we shut our beaches, we shut trailheads. Of course, all the businesses were closed except essential businesses. So, yeah, lots of opportunity to speak to various media outlets about that whole process. So it's been interesting.
So before we get too far into this, any advice for me as I venture into this path?
No, I can see you have your notebook there and you're prepared. I think, the best, it's interesting you say that because there are definitely, the more you get interviewed, there are good interviewers and bad interviewers. And the good ones are the ones who have thought about it a little bit ahead of time and prepared and actually have, a direction they want to go in as opposed to just sort of winging it off the top as they talk to you. So, no, I'm ready for you though, Adam.
Okay, good. Being prepared, I don't think has ever been a problem for me. We'll see how I can pull this off though. But for Laguna Beach, there's so many elements that you have to look at there. You have the residents, which a very important stakeholder. You have folks like me. When I was a kid, we would drive from what was Sunnymead, which is now called Moreno Valley. For those who don't know our geographic region, that's 65 miles away. And on the 91 freeway, that's about a 2-hour drive if everything goes right. But my family would pack up the car and we'd go down to Laguna Beach and we would stay there all day long. Then you have the businesses. Tell us about what it's like trying to balance all that.
Well, it probably is the biggest challenge in terms of being on the council here in Laguna. We're 23,000 residents, right around 23,000, 6.3 million visitors a year, something like that. And it's because of the ocean. We get some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and we get summer art festivals that have been around for 80 years. in one case and 50 in another. So lots of people want to come see us and visit us, and that's great. But it does create burdens on the residents. So we're constantly trying to make sure we welcome the visitors, but can respect the residents' rights, and try to give them a little bit of respite from the crowds.
So even this sounds like that's busy. That sounds like a lot to consider. But you also have a day job that I think some would qualify as kind of the high stress type day jobs. Tell us about that.
Well, so I'm a municipal finance lawyer, have been, as you pointed out, since 1982. So we serve clients up and down the state. I do a lot of work representing the state of California, and then a number of local cities, school districts, water districts, a huge variety of clients, assisting them really with their financing needs for public infrastructure. So, which is I found it to be a very rewarding and interesting profession, which is now almost 40 years, right?
Well, to balance all this, I would assume you have to be a multitasker. And when I've spoken to some of your partners, a theme that's come up a few times is you're the one individual that they all know that actually can multitask. The rest of us do it, and we think we're being more productive, but we're really just slowing ourselves down. From what I hear, you really are quite the multitasker. Are those skills that you've tried to develop, or just been kind of forced by circumstances to develop?
Well, I think a little forced by circumstances, probably. Sometimes you have to do that in order to survive. If you're doing, multiple things, whether it's volunteer work, which a lot of people do, obviously, your profession, and in my case, the local government efforts as well. But multitasking is one aspect of it. The other aspect is just working, a lot of hours, right? Nights, weekends, to get it all done.
That's right. Well, on that kind of note is I'm trying to think about how all these different things came together, because you have pieced together quite a few things. If I went to my wife, or when I have a big decision, oftentimes my wife and I talk about it. And if I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I think it's about time I ran for school board. I think it's about time I got on that planning commission. I think it's time I'm going to serve as mayor," I think she's like, "Well, are you ready to quit your job?" But somehow you've been able to piece all this together. Did you have that conversation? Was there a master plan you two developed back in 1982, or how did all this happen?
Certainly not a master plan, but definitely it was, joint decisions along the way. We had 3 kids, and I think it was important to my wife that, I'd be doing more than just work, right? That I'd be involved in the community, but I'd be involved with bringing the kids up. So even before we had elected stuff, I was involved in youth sports for years, which I loved, coaching kids and stuff. And Boys and Girls Club, I was on, I've been on their board, and so I think it's just so important to get involved in your community as your family's growing up. And that was something we jointly were committed to. And she's done a ton of volunteer work herself throughout the community. And then it kind of evolved from that into the elected roles.
And I think you started off in the school board. Was that when your kids were in the school system?
Yeah. That was 1997, I guess. I got on the school board, and then I was on for about just under 10 years. And yeah, that was great. And Laguna Beach is a fabulous school district, small, 4 schools, smallest district, I think, in the county. But a very solid educational program for kids. So it was rewarding to be able to do that for that period of time, and being involved that way with the kids going through school.
Well, the common thread I see between all these things is public service. The career you chose, you're serving government, the school board, the city council, the mayor, all that activity is centers around local government. Is that something that's always been important to you, or did just one thing lead to another, like with getting on the board originally?
I grew up in Boston, or outside Boston, in a small town. Westwood was the name, and it was about 15,000 people. And if Massachusetts is what we call direct democracy back there, they have town meetings where people literally, the town goes down, there's a quorum, the X number of voters have to show up. They vote on the budget each year directly. And my parents were involved in a lot of that process. My mom was actually a library trustee. So she was elected to that position, and my dad was involved in town hall, attending town hall on a regular basis. So I was part of the ingrained growing up. I think that I had parents who were involved, and that probably was what led me in part to being involved here locally. So it goes back to the roots, I guess.
Well, when I first became a partner at my firm, there's someone we both know well, Larry Rollout. He would oftentimes remind me what hat we're wearing in that environment. Whether it's any number of different hats we could be wearing, and that's just with one company. With the different roles that you serve, are you in a situation where you have a method, or do you view it as hats like Larry, or how do you keep it all straight on what role you're serving at that moment?
Well, you're right. You got to understand what role you're playing and what hat you're wearing, because when I'm advising clients, I'm advising, right? I'm not making the decisions. When you're on the school board or the city council, you're making the decisions. So you got to definitely know your role and what you're doing. But it's easy enough to keep those two separate, and you know remember which hat I've got on at which time.
Well, in our organization, we have heard stories about Bill Fieldman, who's the founder of Film and Roll Up, and Fritz Stradling, one of the founders of Stradling. And two guys were very focused on water agencies, went around the state, helped them get formed, get financing set up. But really, a lot's changed since then. What was Stradling like when you joined? And have you heard similar stories about Bill and Fritz and their adventures around Southern California when it had no water?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they Fritz Stradling in the bond council world had really a significant role in terms of the history of it all. Because if you go back in California, essentially there were two firms that did bond council work. It was Orr, Carrington, and Sutcliffe in the north, and O'Melveny and Myers in the south. And Fritz actually started with O'Melveny and Myers, but by the time he came and started Stradling in 1978, it was still the case that you couldn't get your legal opinion accepted on Wall Street. You had to be in something called the Red Book. You couldn't until you'd done a deal. So Fritz actually had to do the first couple deals as a co-counsel with O'Melveny in order to get in the Red Book. And then he and Bill and others back in that time frame they were forming districts that over vast areas of Southern California that didn't exist, like Rancho California Water District and Eastern Municipal Water District, Santa Margarita Water District here in Orange County, which is now got thousands of homes in it out there. So it was quite a historic period when the two of them started out, and I sort of get in on the tail end of that piece in the early 80s, but it was very interesting to see.
Yeah, I could see trying without having the legal opinion have been accepted by Wall Street yet, and having to reach out to essentially competitors to say, I have this deal, partner up with me. I wonder what those conversations must have been like. Did you ever hear any stories there?
No, I never heard any real detailed stories, but I think Fritz had client control, right? So he knew he knew he had this client who wanted to do this deal. So I think the other firm probably said, okay, well, we don't get 100% of the credit, but we get to get some of the credit. And of course now, if you look at the lists each year, and there's probably 4 or 5 primary bond counsel firms in the state that do the lion's share of the work, but the list is probably 25 or so, 25, 30 that do 1 or 2 or a few deals. So it really changed the landscape from that standpoint.
So by the time you join, you guys get to do deals on your own. What was the firm like then?
Well, the public finance part of the firm started in January 1, 1978, and there were 3 partners, Fritz and John Murphy and Tom Clark. And John did a lot of the finance work that moved beyond the work that Fritz had done, and kind of got us into the housing finance, which was very big in the early 80s when there were a lot of apartments being developed around the state, affordable apartments, affordable housing. So we did a lot of work in that early 80s until the tax law changed in 86. But we kept slowly growing, steadily growing, looking to expand the types of deals that we did, and do more work for Underwriters Council. So it was it was a dynamic time in the 80s, and we, I think, really kind of started to develop our reputation as a group of lawyers who could perform and, and cared a lot about the client and made sure we did it right.
And so the firm's changed a lot since 1982. You employ 18. We have at least 130 attorneys, which means more than 130 employees. How would you describe how that change has taken place?
Well, it is interesting how it evolved. And for us on the public finance side, there were a couple of key steps along the way for us. And really a very significant one up for us was, I think in 1991, our partner Carol Liu joined us as a tax lawyer. And in order to do the municipal finance, as you well know that we do, it's essential to have a tax lawyer. And Carol came on board and, very quickly rose through the ranks of the National Association of Bond Lawyers, which is our national group of lawyers, became president of that organization. And he had been on their board and then eventually became president. So we kind of began to establish a reputation as a firm that was, kind of well known in the area, well respected in the area. Her background and experience with others, tax lawyers around the country, was very helpful. And then a few years after that, kind of mid 90s, I think it was 1996, we added a couple other lawyers, David Kaznoka, who headed up our San Francisco office, where we then opened another, our second office, and Doug Brown, who both of whom joined us from Brown and Wood at the time. And, that added a substantial school district practice for us that we didn't previously have, and strengthened our water district practice through Doug. And then I'd say the third piece of the puzzle for us, and from the outside, was our partner Kevin Savali, who joined us from Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. Probably, I think that was around '05, something like that. And he brought with him a lot of state work and a lot of underwriter council work. So we kind of added that piece of the puzzle as well. So it's been sort of slow organic growth over 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, for folks that aren't in service business to really understand what it's like adding people, it's a really challenging thing. It's not like you're building a factory and once that factory's done, you have a certain amount of widgets that come out from it. You need every person involved in that decision to sign off and know that they're going to take a change in compensation to make sure that adding those people can happen and take place. And were there really difficult conversations, or was it really a kind of a cohesive, just natural evolution that you continue to be able to add these people along the way?
Yeah, as I say, it was sort of measured, and we didn't try to take too big a bite out of the apple at once. So we added, one person with Carol, a couple people with David and Doug, and then Kevin came along, and then of course we were adding people internally. But one of the things that's nice in our industry, and this, is it is small enough that you tend to work with other professionals, on a fairly regular basis. So it's not like we were dealing with unknowns when we asked them to join the firm. So that was, that's really beneficial. You kind of say, okay, maybe we should go ask this person, target this person, see if they join us. So, we're very fortunate. It's all worked out. We're all still partners, happy together here more than 20 years later.
Great. That's really good to hear. When I started in our business, I felt that firms were more isolated by type of deal they did. So you might say these firms did community facilities district deals, like those would be called dirt firms or dirt bond type firms. These firms did geos, these firms did trans, but I didn't see as much of kind of really focus on the client and saying we can do all these different things for a client. When I look back on it, I think Stradling had a big influence on being able to do that and meet a lot of those needs for a client. Was that a strategic move to be able to say, let's meet all these clients' needs versus just focusing and being a specialist in one area?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I mean, we did start out with some specialties, as you pointed out, Fritz did a lot of work in the water area. Then John Murphy did a lot of work in the housing area. Mid 80s, myself and others got involved in the land secured financings that was started up, fairly robustly there in the late 80s. But we decided, we want to be able to service all of our clients' financing needs. So by adding people and by slowly working on various deals, we developed that breadth. So we were able to help people on pretty much our clients on pretty much any kind of financing. We did the first toll road financing in the state, for example, the Orange County toll roads. No other firm had done California toll roads, so we expanded into that role, and pretty much feel competent to help clients with about any kind of financing that we do here in California.
What do you think's next for public finance or municipalities?
Well, I think for the next couple of years is a tough road. I think this COVID-19 crisis has blown a hole into a lot of budgets. It's going to be a slow road back. I think that we're going to start seeing that here. We already are seeing it with some of the budgets that are being hit in June. School districts have got a big challenge ahead as to how do they reopen safely, and what is that going to drive up costs? Do I need twice as many classrooms, or do I have to go half days? Or so I think the next couple of years is going to be interesting how we recover from COVID. I mean, the market has come back fairly strongly. As you know, interest rates are so low, so there's going to still be refinancing opportunities. But I think there's going to be some constraint on new money, the financings for some public agencies as a result of that. But on the other hand, it's interesting. This business, I've been through, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 recessions now, and public finance tends to do well in recessions. In large part, I think, due to the refinancing opportunities. Recession, interest rates tend to go down. You get an opportunity to it's like refinancing your mortgage on your house. The public agency gets to refinance and lower its own payments. So, we'll survive as an industry. We're going to do just fine, I think. But some of our clients are going to need a little help to get through some of these budgetary issues.
Yeah, certainly agree. Well, when you're not in Laguna Beach, I hear you spend a little bit of time in the Lake Tahoe area.
Yeah, I do. We have a place up there. My wife grew up in Sacramento, so her dad built a cabin up there in the late 50s. She went up there as a kid and loved it, and so we still get up there and use it, and tends to be where our family now, a couple of grandkids, all get together and try to enjoy a little time away from the pressure of the daily life down here.
So I guess if you live in paradise, you have to find another paradise to go on vacation and be with your family. Right? If you're in Laguna Beach, you really have to find another nice place to go to get away from things, right?
I can't complain about that. They're 2 beautiful places. One's different. It's up in the mountains, and you get this really sense of open space. But yeah, very very fortunate to have both those places to go visit.
And so it sounds like if your father-in-law had a cabin or built a cabin, you came to California for Berkeley in law school. Is that the time frame when you met your wife?
I did. Yeah, we actually met my first year of law school, but she was going out with another guy at the time. But so it was really after my second year of law school, just starting my third year, that we started dating, and yes, and then we got married a couple of years after that. So it's been a great relationship, great marriage.
And from what I hear, you might have met from someone you worked with for a while.
Oh yeah, so I was introduced by one of my closest friends, and now retired, but law partner for 35 plus years, Kurt Yeager. So he and I were in law school together at Berkeley first year. We got to be friendly, and he had gone to UC Davis with my wife, and so we met through Kurt and his wife, actually, who had also gone to Davis. So yeah, small world that we ended up working together as partners for so long.
And so for those who may not know, that not only do we had Kurt in the business, we had John Yeager helping the developers when we were all kind of negotiating for our public agencies. And now there's another young Yeager at the straddling office. Is that correct?
Yeah, John's son, so Kurt's nephew, Nick Yeager. And yeah, he's in the municipal finance world. I guess it runs in the Yeager blood to be in municipal finance.
So we've talked a bit about how you met your wife. Would you mind telling us about the rest of your family?
Yeah, I've got three kids, a daughter and two sons, and two of them are married. I've got three grandkids. Very proud of all of them, and we have a great time together as a family. So it's nice to have a family that's so close like that.
Now, in this day and age, you don't just go by grandpa or grandma. Do you have a specific name that you've designated for yourself?
Well, this is the way it works, right? The oldest grandchild, who's now 5, our granddaughter, she of course comes up with the names, right? When she can first start speaking. So she calls me Bop Bop, Bop, right? Because I
Okay.
guess you couldn't say Bob, so Bop Bop. And I don't know how my wife's name came out as Gibby. Maybe that was Grammy or Gibby, but so yeah, everybody's got a strange one, but those are ours.
Those are yours. That's great. That's great to hear. Now, if I have it right, all three of your children's names start with vowels. Was that intentional?
um, it actually, by the third one, it was, I think. The first two, our daughter Erica and then our son Andy. I think when the third one came along, who's Elliot, we said, yeah, well, we got two vowels, we may as well keep it going that way. So,
Oh, good. Well,
a little unusual.
well, with all that, I think one of the things about our lives is centers around governing body meetings, and that means you work a lot during the day, and then you go to these meetings in the evening. When my wife asked our kids, "Do you want to do what Dad does?" and my youngest son said, "No, Mom, I want to do what the neighbor Scott does," and she said, "Well, why?" He says, "Well, Dad's always gone, and Scott's always at home." And we have the same house, so basically they must be doing pretty similar. And it turns out Scott is a pharmaceutical salesman, and he's able to work from home. Talk a bit about what it's like trying to manage that workday and then the governing body meetings for either work or when you're serving.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, especially when the kids are growing up, because it's a lot of nights, away, either at meetings or work or whatever. The way I used to make up for it, as I mentioned earlier, was so I'd sneak out in the afternoon, maybe like at 3 o'clock, and do a lot of youth sports coaching and stuff, and then you'd be off to your night meeting or back to the office to get something done. But it is a balancing act, and I think when fortunately through technology and so on, it's a little less traveling now for us, at least as the lawyers. But we used to be out on the road, all the time, driving around Southern California or hopping on an airplane up to the Bay Area or Sacramento. And it puts a little strain on family life, especially when the kids are young and growing up. So try to make sure you make time and carve out time on at some point like I described, or on a weekends. But yeah, what we do is very time intensive, so it's tough.
I remember. I don't know if this is the first time I met you in person, but I remember the first time when I thought back on this. The first time I really remember having an opportunity to meet you. It wasn't really a one-on-one. There was about 100 people in the room. It was at a cast-off meeting at your Newport Beach office, and our group of working professionals within the cast-off talk about issues associated with land secured financings. Whatever the issue was, it was going nowhere. Everyone was just weighing in and didn't really see how that conversation would ever get to conclusion. The conversation comes to you, it's your turn to speak, and you express your point of view on it, the position your law firm's taking on it, and kind of what you saw as next. And I remember sitting there thinking, what a cool guy, what a kind of focused and kind of way his peers respected him, was able to bring this chaotic conversation to a close with very few words. And I thought, that's what I want. I'll never achieve the cool part, but I want to be able to be like that, be able to get to a point where my peers recognized what I brought to the table and be able to really move something along. Is that something you really work towards? How did you get to that spot where a young professional like me looked up and said, that's what I want to be like?
Well, you're very kind. I don't know, that may be a little overly generous, but no, I think the way I tend to approach things, both in the public meetings that, where I sit on bodies, or in the kind of meeting you're describing or dealing with clients or other professionals, I find the best thing really is to sit back and listen. It's interesting in large groups like that. Sometimes you get people who come charging in and they want to, set the agenda and state their views, and this is how it is. But I find I always learn a lot by just waiting and listening and hearing what people are saying. And, a lot of times there isn't consensus on things. But if you really listen, you can hear some consensus out there that can be formed, or at least some strains of agreement that you can pull out of things. So yeah, I tend to be not a big talker in meetings, but I like to just sit back and listen. And then, if I don't always have the answers, obviously, but if I can think that I can help synthesize something and pull it together for a group, I try to do that, and then sit down again.
Right. Great. Well, in June of 2020, it feels like listening could be a very valuable trait for a lot of people. I think our industry really appreciates what you have done, and I want to say thank you for doing this public finance conversation. When we had this idea to do this, I knew I wanted you to do it, but I was a little nervous to call you at first, even though I know you very well. I was still nervous, and I lined up a few others, and then finally got the nerve to give you a call. And I very appreciate that you did this, and I want to say thank you.
Well, I'm pleased that you did, and thank you for making the call. It was fun to do this, but thank you for doing these conversations. I think it'll be interesting, I know you've got a variety of people around sort of the public finance world that you're going to interview, which I think will give people, it's a little bit of a mystery what we do sometimes. So it should be interesting to sort of, you get a chance to flesh that out for people. So thanks for doing it.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Okay, take care, Adam.